Gurur Brahma, Gurur Vishnu, Gurur Devo Maheshwaraha, Gurureva Param Brahma, Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Chinmayam Yapyat Sarvam, Trilokyam Sacharacharam, Tatpadam Darshitam Yena, Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Tvameva Mata cha Pita, Tvameva Bandhuscha Sakha, Tvameva Vedyat Navinam, Tvameva Sarvam Mama Deva Deva, Tvameva Sarvam Mama Deva Deva. Jai Guru. Om Sahana Bhavatu, Sahana Bhunaktu, Sahaviryam Karavavahai, Tejasvinavadhitamastu ma vidvishavahai. Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. So we're moving into a section of our text where we begin to discuss karma yoga. What's karma yoga? Karma just means action, the yoga of action. We have some ideas about it. Some people think, oh, I went on my yoga retreat and I did dishes after lunch. I did karma yoga. Is that what it is? Kind of, but it's so much more than that. First of all, it's one of the four great branches. We have karma yoga, yoga of action, bhakti yoga, devotion, raja yoga of psychic development, and jnana yoga, the yoga of knowledge, which is the path I'm trained in. But we include karma yoga as part of the tradition. Why? In the Christian tradition, there's a fellow named Saint Paul, and he wrote in his letter to the Romans this fascinating statement. I do not do that which I would do, and I do that which I hate. Therefore, it is not I that do it, but sin that is lodged in my limbs. Now, in yoga, we don't have the same notion of sin. What we would call it is vasana. So this is the fact of our experience. I set my mind, oh, I've got this bad habit, I'm going to give it up. And I can't. Or I say, I'm going to do X, Y, and Z, and I don't. I've been plagued with this. Am I the only one in the room who's ever had this problem? It's very familiar, especially on the spiritual path. We come to terms with, oh, I've got this attachment. I'm obsessed with the opinions of other people. I need to let it go. And then someone says an unkind word, "Ah," I'm wrecked. I'm going to give up my attachment to material success and things like that. We think we're going to get a big bonus at the end of the year, and we don't. So many issues in our lives where we feel like crappy yogis. Anybody else feel that way? I'm going to meditate every day this week. I don't. What's the problem? So, we've talked before about the whole phenomenon of vasana. A vasana is an impression. Normally, the word we use for impressions is sanskaras. You wouldn't be able to function in the world without sanskaras. That's how you know this is a table. That's how you know this is a lamp. That's how you're able to read a book. That's how you're able to understand language. These are all impressions. By and large, they are not negative. One of the ways we use the term in Indian culture for young children, if they're taught spiritual chants, they do puja with their parents, or a guru comes and visits the family, the child gets auspicious sanskaras as a child. In the West, it happens too. You get good culture. But a subset of sanskara is a vasana. A vasana is an impression left in the unconscious as the result of egoistic actions, meaning it has I-ness and my-ness. It comes from after the fact thinking about pleasurable and unpleasurable experiences. Story I use in class all the time. I'm over at a friend's house for dinner, and for dessert, they serve a bowl of ice cream. My God, this is good. What kind of ice cream is this? Oh, this is Ben and Jerry's Chunky Monkey. Oh, that's incredible stuff. I eat my bowl of ice cream. Everything's fine. Way home, I think, my God, that was good ice cream. Chintya, after the fast, thinking about it. I come home, finish my day, lying down on the couch. I'm watching Rachel Maddow. All of a sudden, sweet tooth. What was that ice cream? Ben and Jerry's Chunky Monkey. I wonder if they have it at Whole Foods. It's only 3 blocks away. Off I go. And I'm impelled to repeat the action. Or antithetically, someone takes you to a restaurant and you have a dish, you go, ugh, and we're going to have that again. You have a negative association. And we have millions of these in our minds. Now, a vasana has 2 powers. I know this is repetitive for many of us, but we're slow learners, so we need the repetition. A vasana has avarana shakti and vikshepa shakti. Avarana shakti means literally veiling power. When my mind is under the influence of vasana, I have the non-apprehension of myself nature. I do not know that I am Brahman, that I am Krishna, that I am that grounded being. Then the second power, Vikshepa Shakti. Shipati is the root, which means to throw or like hurl a spear. Projecting power. What is it that the mind projects? First and foremost, Jiva Bhavana. I feel like a person. I think I'm Jim. I think I'm this body. And simultaneously with that, I perceive a world of name and form that's other, that's separate from me, that's joy-giving and misery-producing. Then kartavya literally means obligatory actions, but in the context of yoga, it means I'll be happy when, it'll be better if, more, better, different. I've got to go from point A to point B. I need to change the world or I need to change me. That is the world. That is samsara. That's the wheel of karma. That's dukkha, suffering. That's my problem. Ego always says, fix the world, fix me. Get a better house, get a better spouse, get rid of the mouse. Whatever it is you need to do to make it okay. Yoga says, how's that working out for you? You know, at best, there's a little temporary relief. Because it's all based in ignorance. My problem is ignorance. Avidya, ajnanam. The avarana shakti, the veiling power, the non-apprehension of myself nature. And the antidote to ignorance is not action. In the Thursday night class, I said, okay, I'm thinking of a song lyric. How many jumping jacks do you have to do to know what song lyric I'm thinking of? How many push-ups do you have to do? How many times do you need to run around the block? Ask me what song lyric I'm thinking of.
What song lyric are you thinking of?
We all live in a yellow submarine. Now you know. Knowledge is the answer to ignorance. Inquiry gives us knowledge. Vivechana, by means of vichara, inquiry. Then why do we have this teaching about karma yoga on action? If the teaching says action will not produce knowledge, why do we have karma yoga? Because we're stupid.
Mm-hmm.
The problem is we need to reduce vasana pressure before inquiry becomes effective. In an agitated or gross mind, self-inquiry is not very effective. And usually we won't even think to do it. Who's had that experience? You've been to lots and lots of class, you've read lots and lots of scripture, but some issue arises in life and you take a baseball bat to it. And that seems so real. You know better. Why can't you remember it? We brought up this word on Thursday night, medha, which means wisdom, or oftentimes a keen memory. But the salient point here is to be able to apply the teaching at the appropriate point in my life experience. I forget. So karma yoga is by and large a preparatory practice which makes self-inquiry efficacious. Now, karma yoga in and of itself will take you all the way to the infinite. But in the Advaita Vedanta tradition, we hold it as an incredibly powerful tool to help reduce vasana pressure. It helps us exhaust vasana. Now, many of us are too smart, frankly, too arrogant. I don't want this karma yoga stuff. I want to read Mandukya Upanishad. Go for the big stuff. And then after you've read your Mandukya, you scream and yell at your family. You're devastated when a friend dies. You're full of greed and pride at work. Oh, but I've been reading Mandukya. So we need to have the humility to see the power of karma yoga. If we practice karma yoga, the deeper flights of meditation become easy. Any thoughts on this before we go into what karma yoga is? This sets it in the frame of our practice. Now, we're just going to touch on it basically in the next kind of 10, 15 verses. But in chapters 3, 4, and 5, we will go into great depth on it because of its power. And one of the things Krishna's going to say, even a little of this brings us peace, frees us from fear. It's really powerful stuff. So there are 5 elements to karma yoga. I'm just going to touch on them, and we're going to get directly into scripture. The first one is act. Notice what does Krishna keep telling Arjuna to do? I don't want to fight. I'm going to sit here in the bottom of the chariot and whine. I'm going to go off to the forest and meditate. What does Krishna say? Don't be a wimp. You got a job to do. Fight. Now, how does that translate into your life and my life? Unless you're a trust fund kid, you probably are going to have to work for a living. Oh, Jim, I hate work. I think what I was born to do is lie on the beach. It's our nature to work. It's our nature to serve the society. Swamiji thundered that. Now, if you are acting adharmically, meaning you're not in alignment with your swadharma, the vocation, the mission, the calling of your own being, then work in the world will be a burden. Work is the highest form of play. Play is the highest form of work. You have a right to enjoy your work. So we are meant to act in the world. How? According to our swadharma. There's an exoteric understanding of this, and there's an esoteric understanding of it. The exoteric understanding of swadharma means you act according to what your jati, the way what you've been born into, your varna, your caste in life. So if you're born, for example, as a Brahmin, you should be a scholar, you should be an academic, you should maybe be a priest, you should be involved in the spiritual culture. If you're Kshatriya, you're warrior caste, you can join the military, you can be a lawyer, stuff like that. If you're a Vaishya, you're a merchant involved with the production, distribution of goods, going to business. Of course, if you're a Shudra, you're just a Shudra. You're supposed to serve me. Then in your next life, you'll do better. That's nonsense. Doesn't matter the circumstances of our birth. Inside, each of us has a calling, a vocation, a job to do in this world. Do you know how I know that you have a job to do in this world and you're the only one that can do it? Because your butt's in the creation. God doesn't make junk. You are part of God's plan. How do I know that? Because you're here. So our job is to get in touch with that. Swadharma is never about a station, having or getting. It's always about doing. True story. So I had a student many, many years ago, and we were discussing this whole notion of swadharma. And he was a Yale graduate. He's a very smart kid. And he was working for US Customs. And he was kind of neutral about that job. He was also an excellent musician, which he did. Where I met him is when we were both singing in the Grace Cathedral choir, men and boys. And he said, well, I've always wanted to be a lawyer. I could just see myself in a three-piece suit, smoking my pipe with my lawyer's office on Union Square, belonging to one of the fancy clubs, on Nob Hill and stuff like that. So if this feels right, try it out. So he starts law school. And then he found out that being a lawyer is not Perry Mason. It's a whole lot of writing and a whole lot of research. And he found he didn't like doing research. He didn't like doing writing. So he liked the idea of being a lawyer. What he didn't like was lawyering. Do you see the difference? One is a romantic idea. The other is the doing. So in order to find your swadharma, pay attention to what it is that you enjoy doing. Now, the problem some of us have is we are either raised in a culture or in a particular family where there's this enormous sense of guilt and obligation. For example, if you're a child of immigrants, We worked so hard to get here. You have to make a lot of money and support us in our old age. Anybody have that particular idea? Oh, my job title is my identity. I've got to have a corner office or I'm not worth anything. So you get all these wrong ideas about Swadharma. What do you enjoy doing? Now, way back when I was a professional musician, I used to teach voice, used to teach singing. And one of the things I would work with young singers, I would ask them, do you want to be a musician or do you want to be a celebrity? I want to be a famous opera singer. I get that. Do you want to be a musician or do you want to be a celebrity? Because all we get in life is work. We're going to get introduced to a notion called karma phalam, or in Hindi, karma phalam. Who can tell me what karma phalam is?
Fruits of your action.
The fruits of our actions, the results. Krishna is going to say, I am the karma phala data. I am the giver of the fruits. All we get is work. Now, if we do karma yoga, we have the best chance of succeeding. Guarantees. So you better enjoy what you're doing. But if you're working at a job that you dislike because your goal is to make a whole lot of money, so then you cannot work at all, you're probably not going to enjoy your life. And a decade can go by and you neither are independently wealthy, nor have you really got yourself doing anything you like. Act in the world how? According to your Swadharma. Now, I have had the tragic experience of working with some yogis who just started in their middle age. And they've always done things out of obligation. They've always done things because of attachment to the end, what other people think they should do, etc. What is it that you really like doing? I don't know, Jim. I said, well, think back when you were young. What did you enjoy? True story. Well, when I was 5, I used to like to finger paint. Oh, what a tragedy. Was that the last time you lived true to your Swadharma? Now, what we should do as parents is provide our kids with all the opportunities to explore whatever it is they take an interest in, without judging and saying, oh, you should do this, or you can't go into that, you won't make enough money, or our people don't do this stuff like that. You can do anything you want if you're willing to work for it. That's the message we should be giving our children. Act how? According to our Swadharma. In the yajna spirit. A yajna means a sacrifice. So it's the Vedic ritual. And again, as we get into the later chapters, we'll go into the symbolism of this. But it basically means You've got a new employer. Sophia, who do you work for?
Myself.
Okay. Actually, you're working for God.
I know you've said that before, but I just find that hard to wrap my mind around.
I know. We'll get there. All of us are working for God. Vinayak is self-employed. He has a business to make a product, radar thing for cars. Is that right?
Mhm.
Yeah. You're working to provide something of service to the world. Oh, I'm just a housewife. No, you're working for God. God has put in your charge the greatest of all responsibilities, the shepherding of the minds and the bodies of these little people. The most important job a person can have. The most important years in a human's life are the first 5. So we act according to our Swadharma in the Yajna spirit. Serve, serve, serve. If our approach is, what am I going to get out of it? This is about me and what's going to make me feel good. You're going to be unhappy. We thrive when we serve. 4th one, which Krishna's going to spend quite a bit of time in this section of Gita. Renouncing our attachment to the fruits of action. Work and let go of the fruits. If our minds are concerned about what am I going to get out of it, what are other people going to think of me, am I going to get a reward, will I get a good review at work, will I get a bonus this year? First of all, it takes your mind off the work. So we let go of our attachment to the fruits of action. The 5th element is the most subtle. Our renunciation of the sense of agency, this illusion that I am the doer. That's, again, deep illusion. It's not going to get into that tonight. It's got a whole chapter on it. So those are the 5 elements. We will repeat this over and over again. What does it do? If you practice karma yoga, a desire arises out of the mind. Where did it come from? Vasana. I'm impelled into action. Of course, no blame. What else can you do? Act according to your self-nature. But if you change your attitude from this is about me and what I can get to it and what's going to make me happy, and instead serve the society, renounce your attachment to the fruits, even that much will start to bring you peace. Then we exhaust vasana without creating new ones. And then the vasana pressure diminishes. Then Atma Vichara becomes easy. So that's the theory behind why we include karma yoga in Vedanta study. Any thoughts on this before we move on?
a question about service. Does it have to be service that you're doing without any compensation? Like if you are getting some compensation for it, is it no longer service?
No, you can and should be compensated. You've got to pay the rent.
Yeah. Yeah, but I guess I do, when I do that, it doesn't feel like service.
Well,
I don't know.
forget
Yeah.
the compensation.
Okay.
Don't do it for the compensation. Let me give you an example. I do not know who donates into the Green Bowl. I'm very grateful that people do. But I do not give you this knowledge because you put 20 bucks in the Green Bowl. It's irrelevant. Yeah, I'm very grateful that people do, and it's appropriate that Guru Dakshina happens. Can you see that?
Yeah.
I do it because I love doing this work.
Yeah.
And I love you. You are Krishna. You are God herself. So if you're a real estate salesperson, the fool says, I need to make this sale because I'm going to make my such and such percentage, and that's going to pay for my cruise at the end of the year. The yogi sees my job is to serve this client and find them the best house I can. Should I take my 3%? Of course. That's not why I'm doing it. This is just my Swadharma. I'm a salesperson. You do financial planning and stuff, right?
Yes.
If you're a yogi, I hope, knowing you, I think you probably do. Your job is to preserve the assets, provide security and peace for your clients.
Yes. Exactly.
Yeah. You serve them.
Yeah.
Now, one of the things Krishna's going to say is, if you act in this way, the reward will come. And if for a while it doesn't come, no big deal. Just keep serving. All right. So I got long-winded, but this is really important to set this up and why it's taught in the tradition. And to do karma yoga is powerful in bringing peace of mind into your life. So are we on verse 30? Is that right, Mark?
Yes, that's right.
Will you help us out, Vinayak?
Dehi nityam vadhyo yam dehe sarvasya bharata tasmat sarvani bhutani na tvam sochiturmasi. This, the indweller in the body of everyone, is ever indestructible, O Bharata, and therefore you should not grieve for any creature.
So this is the ending part of this last part where he's talking about the self in you and in me. So you see the room from your viewpoint. I see the room from my viewpoint. You are aware of your body. I'm aware of my body. You are aware of your thoughts and feelings. I'm aware of my thoughts and feelings. But if you introvert the attentive faculty, who are you? What's your essential nature? Wonderful term from Yoga Vasishtha, my favorite. Chid Akasha, the space of pure awareness. I look behind my eyes and notice the noticer. The same thing. The self in me is not like the self in you. The self in me is the self in you. And the practice that's implied here. Trying not to get caught up in what people look like, their personality, their thoughts and feelings. Look them in the eye. Who is the conscious being looking out? That is Krishna. It's your own self. Birthless, changeless, deathless, indestructible. Next one.
Swadharmapi chavekshana vikampitu marhasi dharma yadhi yuddha shreyonyat shratriyasa na vidyate. Further, looking at thine own duty, thou ought not to waver, for there is nothing higher for a Kshatriya than a righteous war.
Yes. So, here Krishna has used this word, swadharma. Somebody's just translated it as your duty. But it means your nature. So, Arjun is a warrior. He's a general. Guess what warriors like to do? Kick butt and win wars. They love it. Anybody have any lawyers in the family? They love to win arguments. They just love it. They'll argue over anything. I have a dear friend. Her father was an attorney. And at the dinner table, they would trade off taking different sides of a political issue. Then they change sides. And then they try to convince and argue with the other person through, reason and logic to win the point. Kshatriya family. They like a good war. They like to do battle. Intellectually, as well as physically. Do any of you know anybody who has a need to be right all the time? I joke with people, I'm not always right, but I'm always certain. So for a Kshatriya, someone whose nature is to be a warrior, just on that level, that's the reason to fight. This will bring you pleasure. Meaning, you are not gonna flip off your vasanas like a light switch. It's not going to happen. Should I enjoy the work I do? Of course you should enjoy it. Any of you listen to any of those old Bill Moyers interviews with Joseph Campbell?
Yeah.
Oh, they're magnificent. This was a big point that he was a Vedantin. Joseph Campbell was a Vedantin. And he would talk about following your bliss, the hero's journey. Your sense of rightness will tell you what you're supposed to be doing in life. Trust it. True story. I have a dear friend who's older than I think this fellow's now 78. And his parents ran a bar in Chicago. And he went to school, went to the University of Chicago in economics, went to Berkeley, got an MBA, doing finance, because he wanted to do something other than be a bartender like his parents. Now, he loves music, fine pianist, and he loves the theater. He lights up when he's in a show. He really found doing accounting a grind. And guess what happened? As long as I knew this fellow, he didn't keep a job very long. He'd get angry, he'd get frustrated. Perfectionism would get on him. He really hated it. He couldn't wait when he finally was able to retire. What did he do? Now he spends his time doing music and being in shows. The problem is when you're over 70, it's a lot harder to memorize a script. I don't know what would have happened if he had trusted himself as a young man and gone into music or theater. See what would happen. But he was fighting his nature his whole work life. And there are people who do this. Some of us have the idea that the ideal job is one where you don't have to work and nobody can fire you. I'm not making this up. A lot of government jobs are like that. India is filled with civil servants who don't work. And America's the same way. America's the same way. So here Krishna says, you're not going to be happy if you don't fight this war. Next verse.
Yathachaya chopannam swargadvaram apavratam sukhinah kshatriyah partha labhante yuddham idrasham. Happy indeed are the Kshatriyas, O Partha, who are called to fight in such a battle that comes of itself as an open door to heaven.
So, Swarga is heaven. Swarga doesn't mean it's some place we go after death. Swarga means it's the mind state where we're doing what we love, we're enjoying it, and we're successful at it. That's Swarga. So when you get to do what you love, and it may come unbidden. I don't know if any of you are either culturally attuned or old enough to remember David Crosby. You might know who he was. Tell us who David Crosby was.
Singer, dancer?
Is this the Crosby Show?
No, Crosby, Stills and Nash.
Right. He's a singer.
Yeah.
Singer, songwriter, guitarist.
So he had an earlier group. I think it was the Birds, wasn't it?
Oh, I don't know.
Yeah.
The Birds?
They were kind of a surfer band, not that good. He was asked to put together a group and they performed at Woodstock. The second gig Crosby, Stills, and Nash had was the Woodstock music festival. From that point. You all know what Woodstock was?
Mhm.
Yes, no?
Yes.
Okay. Huge music festival back in the 60s. I mean, it was iconic. But it made the careers of so many musicians. Jimi Hendrix playing the national anthem on the guitar. Who knew Woodstock would be that? He just thought it was a gig out in the field. Came unbidden. He just passed away, a couple weeks ago. Still making music, couldn't stop. Just that's what he did. Incredible poet, wonderful singer, wonderful songwriter. This is what Dharma. Now, all of us get a Woodstock. But if you're on point and you're doing what you do, so luck comes to those who are fully prepared. I could tell you stories about famous opera singers who are understudies. The prima donna gets sick. The understudy comes out, sings their performance, everybody raves, huge career starts. You better believe she was prepared. That's all part of this. That's all part of this. Talent is cheap. Most of life is hard work and practice. Hopefully you enjoy what you're doing. Hopefully you enjoy. So here Krishna is saying, this is a righteous war. Not too many generals get to do that. Most wars, who's the good guy, who's the bad guy, is not quite so clear. Not the propaganda, but it's actually going. All right, next verse.
Atha chetvamimam dharmyam sangramam na karishyasi tatah sarvadharmam kirtin chahitva papam vapyasi. But if you will not fight this righteous war, then having abandoned your own beauty and fame, you shall incur sin.
So we have this word papam, translated as sin. We want to move away from the Judeo-Christian norm, notion of it, and we want to move away from what I call a juridical notion of papam. What do I mean by juridical? If you drive 85 on the freeway, you incur sin, the cop pulls you over, you get a ticket. Then you have to go to court and pay the fine. That's not how papam works. Listen carefully. The opposite of papam is what we call punya, usually translated as merit. Any action, gross, meaning done at the physical level, subtle, meaning it's a mental action, that has as its result further grossification of my mind. It makes it more agitated, or grossifies my body, makes it more unhealthy, is papa. Any action, gross or subtle, that has as its result more quiescence of mind, health for the body, harmony, is punya. So if you're doing a puja at home and you've had a fight with a family member, and you may be doing the mantras perfectly as you're, giving the flowers to the Morty, and you're spending your time thinking, how could he have said that? He's such a terrible person. Doesn't he know who I am? I'm just so tired of how faultless he is. You can sit there, say the mantra, and do the oblation, and it's papam, it's sin, because it's grossifying your mind. Now it can shift. For example, let's say someone gives up drinking. Bad for your health, bad for your mind. And what happens to many people? You get a sugar craving. Don't worry about it. Nobody ever got arrested for fat driving. The candy's punya. But 6 months or a year later, oh my God, I feel so gross. My clothes don't fit. My body aches. My back hurts. Well, maybe it's time now to look at your diet and exercise. So what was punya at one point can become papam later. Jim, I do japa. I do 1,008 repetitions of my mantra every morning. Very good, punya. Help purify your mind. Oh, Jim, I've been doing this for 5 years now, and I think I'm getting nowhere. Well, maybe your mind has gotten more quiet than the mantra. Why don't you try stopping the mantra? See what happens. Are you catching the subtlety of how we hold this punya and papa? So it's not, I get a traffic ticket because I did this thing, or I get gold stars because I did that thing. It's not how it works. With that in mind, read the verse again, and let's look at what the inner meaning is of it that Krishna is implying. Just the English.
But if you will not fight this righteous war, then having abandoned your own duty and fame, you shall incur sin.
So, true story. Many of you know that at one time, for years and years, I was a professional singer. And I started my journey of learning to sing when I was quite young. And around 1970, I was living in San Diego. And there was a restaurant there. I can't remember the name of it now. But they used to have young singers come in and do arias and songs and things like that. You get a free meal, And it was the entertainment. It was an opera restaurant. So I was there, and I was afflicted by stage fright. Nobody's business. Knees were shaking. Got up and sang my little art song. I think it was Caro Mio Bane or something like that. Came off the stage. I had a glass of wine. I'm just going to give this up. It's too painful. That's called phony renunciation. because I couldn't give it up. I love to sing. Singing is like breathing for me. That was my Swadharma. And by trying to give it up, I was depressed and sad and full of self-pity and all that stuff. It was phony renunciation. Real renunciation. Jim, get up there and sing and put your mind on the music rather than on your anxiety or what people think. So many of us, if we're unsuccessful at a task, or we don't get the rewards we think we should, I'm angry at my company because they didn't give me the raise I wanted, or a bonus, or a promotion. I'm gonna quit. I can't tell you. I had a big issue with this one when I was young. How many times I get angry and walk out. They don't know who I am. No, and they didn't care either. Don't let the door hit you when you get up. You know, I'll fix you. You hurt me, I'll hurt me. That's not renunciation. And if your mind is telling you, I hate working, I just wish I never had to work, it only means you haven't gotten in touch yet with your Swadharma. You can try not working, but two things are likely to happen. One, you're going to run out of money. I jokingly but very truly tell people, God has led me through life through my wallet. Yet I've got to pay the rent or the mortgage. I have to work. And two, you'll have your mind ruminating over all the things. Shoulda, woulda, coulda, shoulda, woulda, coulda, shoulda, woulda, coulda. Now we experiment with things. I was thinking of this the other day. Back when I was living in San Diego, I bought a lute. I thought it would be really cool to learn how to play the lute and sing John Dowland songs. I do not have a gift for the lute, nor did I have the inspiration to practice it. Wrong idea. I didn't want to play the lute. I wanted to full-blown be a lute player. Doesn't work that way. Life doesn't work that way. So here Krishna is saying to Arjuna, if you don't fight, your mind will be filled with regret, and it will become agitated. He's not saying you're going to get a black mark from God. He's not going to get a traffic ticket from St. Peter. Very subtle stuff. And we may know people as they get older who are angry and bitter, whose lives have no meaning because they've invested in things they thought were going to make them happy that didn't. There are others, people. I went to the symphony a couple weeks ago. Most of you probably don't know this fellow, Herbert Blumstead. Anybody know who he is?
Mhm.
He's the oldest performing international conductor, 95 years old. So frail that somebody had to walk him out on stage. He couldn't stand at the podium anymore. He sat on a piano bench. But all the music was there. And he did the Dvorak Sixth Symphony from memory. He doesn't have to keep working. He's had a huge, successful international career. Why do you think he does it? Because he loves it. And he's going to keep doing it as long as he can. To our great delight. All right, one more.
Jim, sir, could I ask a quick question? about
Please.
the, So what if, for example, in the example you gave, if somebody gives up alcohol or whatever they're addicted to, they go through a period of withdrawal, right? And they have immense mental agitation because they're no longer able to sort of numb themselves with the substance. Is that considered punya because you need to go through the withdrawal in order to come out of addiction? Or is that papam because it's agitation, like mental agitation?
Well, that's a very good question. Some people deal with suffering. Suffering happens in the Rajasic mind state by going into tamas. Tamas is unconsciousness, lethargy, non-activity or inactivity. So when we numb out, we don't get rid of the agitation. We just dull it temporarily. And the proof of that is if the addict or the alcoholic is separated from their disease, even if it's, well, like for alcohol, after about a week, you are no longer physically addicted. I think it's the same with like heroin or anything like that. So your problem is no longer physical addiction, but your mind is a mess because you've quit numbing it out. So all of that agitation was always there. It isn't creating agitation. It's revealing the underlying agitation that was already there.
But the step of removing a substance, though, that's a punya because even though your agitation is more clear.
And most people don't stop drinking or using unless their life crashes and burns.
Right.
It's not like they're having fun anymore. We used to say, first the man takes the drink, then the drink takes the drink, then the drink takes the man. That's the progression. All right, next verse.
Kirtin chapi bhutani kathayishyanti te vyayam sambhavitsya chakirtir marana datirchate. People too will recount your everlasting dishonor. And to the one who has been honored, dishonor is more than death.
Yes. So some of us are not concerned with things like our good name or honor. What's the fellow, George Santos? Yeah, he's without shame. It's fascinating. Just fascinating. Other people, their good name and their honor is very important to them. For Kshatriyas, usually that's part of it. I have a very good friend who's a retired major in the US Army. And his good name and his honor is incredibly important. And when at one point he was accused of some unethical behavior, it was not unethical behavior. Fought it like a tiger. Wasn't about money or anything like that. It was about my good name. So this, for some people, this is a big deal. So what is Krishna doing? He's poking. He's showing Arjuna where is his ego, where are his attachments, where are his identifications. Notice he's not saying yet. You shouldn't be concerned about honor. He's saying, act, O Arjuna, according to your vasanas, according to your swadharma, in a spirit of sacrifice, not for your own sake, for the good of the country. All right, let's do, no, that's it. We got to stop. What verse are we on for next week?
35.
35. Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Hari Om Shri Guru Namaha.